Hey guys, Lucas here, otherwise known as God of Bread. I decided to make a video today to look at some of the internet's reactions to the quality of life changes that Jagex has proposed for Chambers of Xeric. Now, looking through the original blog post myself, I was able to form some opinions based off of my experience with Chambers of Xeric, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well as what some of you guys on the internet have said about the proposed changes as well. So, jumping right into it, my initial reaction when I was reading this blog post is I thought a lot of these changes were actually really good. I thought that it seemed like they were trying to change a lot of things that made the raids not necessarily easier, although there are some changes that make it a little bit easier, and we'll talk about that. But for the most part, a lot of these changes seem kind of like practical things that a lot of people who do a lot of Chambers of Xeric struggle with, or things that we kind of maybe take for granted now that we're just kind of in the motions and we just go, okay, I guess this is just how it's going to go. I'm not going to spend too much time going over the blog posts or the changes themselves, but I did want to highlight some things that you guys talked about or pointed out on the internet and kind of react a little bit to that and maybe delve into some of the comments that people have for those things as well. So let's get into it. So the first thing I'm going to start out with is this post right here made by Mod Goblin himself. First of all, the top comment here coming from Raids Monkey Ideas, and he's commenting on the little note that Jagex added when talking about the Vespula part of the raid. It says, we asked 100 raiders how to do Vespula without using redemption. 76 said they didn't know, 22 said they'd never seen Vespula, and added that their mentor won't let them into the crabs room, which is hilarious. And 2 people said they knew how, but were probably lying, and his comment was just LMAO. Yeah, this was pretty funny. I myself have never done a Vespula room, and I don't really plan on it. You know, as far as how the room is right now, maybe if I had like max gear, or like a Twisted Bow, or Tunic and Shadow, which is like max gear, right? Then I might think about it, but yeah, as far as Vespula room, that I don't even really know what that room is about. The second highest upvoted comment is a hot take. Ooh. It says, I don't think we need scouting at all. The survey is perfect because it identifies all the things that are wrong with the various rooms and offers choice for improvements. That is the correct way to fix Chambers of Xeric in my opinion. Apparently, and also the opinion of a bunch of other people. The developers that designed Chambers of Xeric did an incredible job given the state of the game at the time and the knowledge that they had at the time. Scouting is counterintuitive because the dev work has already been done on these rooms, so giving players the option to just never see some of these rooms feels like a massive waste of resources. And yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with that. The developers of these raids spent a long time creating each of these rooms and making sure that each room was unique and different and had its own challenge or puzzle that needed to be solved. The fact that the meta is just to straight up skip a lot of these rooms kind of feels like a lot of that work is just going to waste, right? Like, more people should want to do Vespula, more people should want to do Vasa and Tecton and these things once they start learning how to get better at the raids, especially once they start getting better gear. You know, a lot of the times, even when people start upgrading their gear nowadays, they still don't go do things like Vespula or Vanguards until they've really reached like the end game or until they start doing challenge mode raids. So I think that this makes a lot of sense. He also says it would be much better for people to just fill out the survey and for the devs to improve the rooms in such a way that none of them are seen as wastes of time. Obviously, this is not an easy task, but for the longevity of the game, it's worth it. And yeah, obviously, you know, again, so many people agree with this, and the fact that Jagex are doing this and reaching out and listening to people's opinions rather than just say, oh, we'll just make it so that you can just choose never to do these other problematic rooms that nobody wants to take the time to do. They're saying, no, let's see if we can actually improve what's wrong with these rooms so that people want to actually do them, right? And that's not just making it easier, but really figuring out what's the main issue and why are people always avoiding these rooms. Every room should have some sort of benefit to it, right? Whether it's just dropping necessary resources or gaining more points, right? endgame players will know that, you know, they take Vasa and Tecton because those things give more points, right? As compared to something like Ice Demon. Same thing with thieving, right? You don't want those rooms when you get to that end game level and you're just doing regular raids, because you're not going to get as many points, therefore you're not going to get as high of a chance of getting that oh so valued purple chest. Now we can see here someone replied saying, scouting is still a requirement for the sole reason that speedrun tasks are in the combat achievements, but otherwise I agree. I firmly believe that a speedrun layout should be able to be selected from the board for a 50% point reduction within the raid. Now this is something that I've seen some people be a little bit contentious on, talking about, you know, should we be allowed to choose the layouts? Should we be allowed to customize layouts? Should there be some sort of penalty? Should it be a cost? Should it cost GP? Should it cost points within the raid itself so you don't get as many points within the raid? So this part still seems to be a little bit up for debate, and I think Jagex themselves said that they want to kind of deal with some problems inside the raid first before they start really talking about scouting, but this is a good point to bring up as well. Another comment by CoX here says, fantastic changes across the board, love the approach, and kudos to the team for listening to the feedback. One significant piece I feel was overlooked: the rate of prayer scrolls needs to be addressed, as it's currently far too high at 4 out of 7 purples being prayer scrolls. It was never intended to be as high as it is currently, because additionally dragon sword, harpoon, knives, thrown axes were on the table, and when those were removed the scrolls became a higher percentage as a result. My suggestion would be taking the same approach as was done with HMT and reduce the prayer scroll rates for CMs. So obviously there's some things that people feel that Jagex is still leaving out of some of these changes for Chambers of Xeric. Obviously this is a little bit more of a quality of life update, and they're talking about changing some things as well that will alter a little bit of the rooms in Chambers of Xeric. But clearly 270 upvotes, a lot of people agree with this. They think prayer scrolls happen just way too often. You know, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Are prayer scrolls way too highly balanced in Chambers of Xeric? Should we balance some of these other drops, things like Ancestral Dragon Claws, Dragon Hunter Crossbow, to make them a little bit more common? Obviously the mega rares should be mega rare, but you know, some people might also believe that maybe even those drop rates should be increased slightly, you know, comparatively to what the prayer scrolls are right now, which they kind of dominate the drop pool of the chambers as it is. Blizzard Behind, commenting again on some of the changes that Jagex has proposed here, says, wow, props to the team for making the tough decision to do a 180 on this update's direction. Absolutely the right move. Some of these might even be too nice to us, to be honest. All right, chill out here, Blizzard. But awesome that this is the discussion we'll be having now. Yeah, I mean, clearly this is just a big consensus of a lot of the player base right now, is that they're just really excited that Jagex is even just talking about making these changes and talking about making them soon, right? A lot of times when we see kind of changes get pulled or things, we might think, oh, okay, well, maybe this happens in a year, maybe, you know, 8 to 12 months from now. But clearly Jagex has made a comment, even in the blog post itself, where they're hoping to have some of these changes out by the next leaks or the upcoming leaks, or even the middle of the leaks, right? And we know that that's already been announced as November 15th. So we could see some of these changes as early as late November, which would be really exciting. OSRS Bergusia says, these look fantastic. I'm sure there will be some discussion about implementing too many of these at once will lead to CoX being too easy. But the general theme of trying to address frustrating variances within the raid, chopping Mutatree, Muta's attack variances, hunting for secondaries, Tecton, etc., are exactly the sort of things that should be addressed. Happy to see those are part of the discussions. Yeah, definitely. I think the first reaction I had when I was looking through some of these things that they were proposing inside the survey was, okay, maybe some people might react to this negatively, because I kind of saw some of those changes that they were suggesting as making parts of the raid a little bit easier. but I think the next person kind of encapsulates the reaction to that really well. It says, I really hope people don't look at these changes as making it too easy. So many of these adjustments are to remove frustrating jank that is honestly artificial difficulty. Yeah, things like, killing scavs, trying to find the secondaries, to find the exact number of secondaries, killing them over and over. Things like chopping down the mutadial tree, and sometimes you just have to sit there for a long time, way longer than it feels like you should be. I think it makes a lot of sense that while on the surface it might seem like some of these changes are making the raid easier, really it's just kind of making it more consistent. This person says, Hokkaido looks good. The scav thing might be annoying for more scaled raids and become a small scav 2.0. I'm not really sure what that means. But then he says, free scaling will probably be unbalanced, to be honest. Which I think was what a lot of people kind of initially reacted to when Jagex kind of proposed, like, okay, what do you guys think of just letting, people kind of scale and scout the raids however much they want? I do think scaling is on a little bit of different level than scouting, though. As far as if you want to make the raid harder or scale more, I think you should be able to do that without having to send, create a whole nother account and have them just sit at the beginning of the raid. Seems kind of silly to me that that's what it takes in order to, scale the raid in that sense. But, it is what it is. Mod Goblin in response here says, scouting changes probably, we just want to figure out how's best to do it. It's effectively what it says in the blog post. Address the why do people feel like they have to scout so aggressively, then see where the dust settles and look at scouting afterwards to make something that addresses those needs, since they'll likely be more lightweight than what we were offering, and people will likely be happier with a variety of layouts rather than the potential for learn VTV crope, only VTV crope profit. I'm not really sure what that last line means, but I think what basically he's saying here is just kind of what the whole blog post is about, and kind of what everyone has been praising Jagex for, is that, hey, they really just want to kind of feel out the waters, see what people actually think about Chambers of Xeric, and then make changes appropriately, or pull changes appropriately, right? Which, again, is super cool to see, and I think everyone kind of unanimously agrees that it's the right direction for where they want to see Chambers of Xeric go. Baron Beard says, holy shite, the Elder Maul idea is fun. Can we just get that regularly in the game? Elder Maul is Garbo, that would be a really unique change. Hits so hard to break their armor. Probably wouldn't make it busted, I imagine, at least not solo. Maybe in large groups of Maulers though. Yeah, I think it would be really cool to kind of see the proposed changes for the Elder Maul work in different areas as well. I've read some other comments talking about how even with these changes, the Elder Maul still probably wouldn't beat out the Dragon Warhammer, assuming you hit with the Dragon Warhammer, right? And that you probably just need a whole team of people with the Elder Maul for it to be any sort of comparison. But even then, a whole team of people with Dragon Warhammer might just be better. But yeah, I think that would be really interesting to kind of spread that buff, not just to Chambers of Xeric, but to everywhere, and see kind of what the reaction is, or maybe just beta test it and see kind of how it does at different places. Is it better? Is it the same? Is it still worse? Right? But I think obviously something needs to be done with the Elder Maul, because right now it's pretty much just a useless mega rare. And the next comment says, agreed, being the same rarity as T-Bow should give it some prestige. Doesn't have to be a direct upgrade to Dragon Warhammer, but making it an alternative or maybe slightly better in some contexts. Yeah, I think the fact that it drops at the same exact rate as the Twisted Bow, and Twisted Bow is for a long time arguably the best weapon in all of old school RuneScape, and now it's like, tied for the best weapon with possibly the Shadow, maybe in some cases has it beat out. Yeah, I mean, it's got to have some use case, right? It just seems like such a waste for it to be in that slot and it just be completely useless almost everywhere, right? Yeah, a bunch of comments below this agree as well. Says, it looks so cool, I want any reason to use it. Literally anything to make the Elder Maul better would be appreciated. The Elder Maul needs some kind of buff. I'm sure Jagex can think of something great. Like, people are just begging at this point. They're just like, please, Jagex, do something. Anything to make this weapon just usable. We just want to use it. We just want to swing that big old hammer over our heads and slam it down on some faces. Please. Looking at some posts outside of the main one created by Jagex, we have some like this. Says kudos to the writers of the recent Chambers of Xeric posts, where they're talking about that Vespula comment that they made, where they asked 100 raiders about how to do Vespula. I thought that was hilarious. Clearly, a lot of people enjoyed that as well. Some more posts talking about the Elder Maul, about its buff. Seems like a lot of people are kind of in the middle about the Elder Maul buff. They think it's good, but it could be better. Looking at the post here, it says, in my opinion, the Maul should have gotten the Dragon Warhammer spec. So, you know, maybe the the Elder Maul having the Dragon Warhammer spec, having a little bit higher accuracy, higher crush bonus, could be a better alternative to Dragon Warhammer. There could be a case that says that the Dragon Warhammer loses a lot of its use, but again, the Elder Maul being a mega rare kind of keeps it as a weapon that probably not everyone will have access to. So, you know, this could be an idea. It says, it would be cool, but where would this be used? If it takes 7 successful hits to lower a boss's health to that of a Dragon Warhammer, why would you not just use a Dragon Warhammer? And yeah, that's a valid point. You know, a lot of the counterpoints says, oh, the Warhammer is not as accurate. You hit a lot of zeros a lot of times, and it could go either way. You could also hit zeros with the Elder Maul, and would that not lower the bonus by 5%? Would you not get that proc if you hit a 0 with the Elder Maul? Is a good things to bring up as well when talking about adding this buff. This person says, would be nice if they added this as a separate Elder Maul buff and then went with one of the other Tecton suggestions. At Tecton, it's still worse than Inquisitor's Mace / Scythe, so it would be pointless to add it only to Tecton, where it won't even be used unless you're a main with a smaller bank. Yeah, so this person's kind of just suggesting like, hey, why don't we just add this as a buff to the Elder Maul and then also make changes like lowering the defense or lowering the crush defense of Tecton to maybe make it a little bit more useful in general. Because obviously things like Inquisitor's Mace, it's a very good weapon. The Scythe works really well due to the fact that Tecton takes up more than a 1x1 space, right? So, totally valid point here. Person replying to that comment says, my biggest complaint about solo CMs is Tecton, and if it was only the Elder Maul change that made it through, it wouldn't really change anything. It would feel like you would drain its defense as much as it would by restoring it at the anvil. Or as much as it would be restoring it at the anvil. Also saying 7 Elder Maul hits would be about comparable to a Dragon Warhammer. I'm just like, or you could just hit 1 Dragon Warhammer and have 7 Scythe hits instead. Yeah, I think that's the main point that people are coming across here. It's like, yeah, this would be cool to add this to Elder Maul, but what else can we add to make the weapon a little bit more useful? And not just at Tecton, but at other places as well. Because if you just hit 1 Dragon Warhammer and then swing the Scythe 7 times, you're getting, what, 7 times, so 21 hits with the Scythe, and all at that lower defense, whereas you would instead get 7 hits with the Elder Maul. And that's it, right? Looking at other posts here, we have this one right here. It's kind of funny. It says, CoX quality of life. It's beautiful. I've looked at this for 5 hours now. I think that it's got 223 upvotes. I think that a lot of people kind of agree with this. It says, so excited, dude. I'm happy Jagex listened to feedback. As someone who hasn't done Chambers of Xeric, can anyone explain how helpful these changes will be? Extremely helpful. It fixes both pain points in learning and farming it. Chambers of Xeric is one of those great pieces of content in the game, but it is janky AF. It is old and some stuff in there makes no sense. These changes makes it make more sense. Yeah, and I think that's just what a lot of people are just complaining about. It's just some of these things that are in the chambers right now just don't really make, like, why are they in there? Like, why does Mutadial not take damage when you freeze it away from the tree? Why does that happen? Right, so I think a lot of these things make a lot of sense. It's something that people have been looking forward to for a long time and are really looking forward to finally seeing addressed in Chambers of Xeric. Well guys, I think I've made this video long enough. We've looked at a lot of the different comments that people have left on the Reddit posts and kind of reacting to the surveys. Again, this is only about 24 hours after the post was made, so I'm sure people will continue to react to it, continue to fill out the surveys, and we'll see kind of what the results of those surveys are, and ultimately what Jagex comes out with and what they decide to do in regards to some of these changes for Chambers of Xeric in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have your own insights or your own reactions that you want to let me know about, please put those down in the comments. I'd love to read through some of those and maybe create a separate video where I just go through some of the comments and some of things that you guys think about on here and some of your reactions and kind of figure out what the consensus is on this platform. So if you would please go ahead and like, subscribe the video, share it if you will, and I hope you guys have a great day.